Welcome to Bottle Rockets with Alena Sucheva, your top hockey podcast. All right. Welcome back to the show, everyone. We've got Mave and Jerry. Welcome back, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
How's everyone doing? Anything exciting this week?
Yeah, my granddaughter's team is playing and they're losing 2-1, and they're annoying us a great deal. But we got one period to go, so hopefully it'll turn around. I get very excited watching the games. It's like watching an NHL game.
They still have time to recover, so yeah.
Right.
Well, big news this week. McDavid finally signed a 2-year extension worth 12.5 million AAV. His contract lining up his timeline with Matthews, actually both set to hit free agency in 2028. Do you think, guys, that was intentional?
My feeling on this has everything to do with his wife. His wife is a very successful business person. She's got 2 operations working in Edmonton, and they're both relatively new. You know as well as I do that women have as much say when it comes to business and the family as the male does. It's agreed that they both like the city of Edmonton, and certainly McDavid himself has to be frustrated. They haven't won a cup since he's been there. This is an ultimatum. He's basically he's telling Stan Bowman, the GM, you got 2 years to win a cup, and then I'm out of there. So that's what it comes down to. And this gives his wife 2 years with her business. She could sell it if they decide to move it, depending on what happens. She's in a position to make her big bucks and then cash in, or, hey, who knows? He could live his life out there, but I don't think he wants to. I think he wants, those are his 2 years. It's Stanley Cup or I'm out of there. That's my feeling.
There's 2 rules of thought here that he did the Edmonton a favor by leaving so much money on the table. I mean, they already knew what Kaprizov had signed for, so he left $5 million a year on the table, and that's not a small amount, not a small consideration. So they think that he loves Edmonton, he's going to stay because he took so much less money, but then there's Stan's opinion that it's almost kind of an insult to the Edmonton fans that he's saying, I don't really care about you. I just want a cup. And if we don't get it in 2 years, I'm leaving. None of this Oiler for life thing going on there. So, yeah, I'm still torn between the two. I don't know what to think.
I think he's given his life to the Oilers. How many more years does he have to be in one of the smaller cities in the NHL? And he did something nice. He took a lower amount, but he doesn't have to be dedicated to Edmonton any more than anybody has to be stuck in one city if he's not happy. And he's going to be with his buddy Leon. The problem with the Oilers has nothing to do with McDavid. They got some of the worst goaltending in the league. This is chronic. This is like a bad headache that won't go away. And you know what? The dopey managers who've been there, they don't take the aspirin for the headache. Why do they stick with these guys? It's beyond belief. And that's going to be more damage to McDavid than anything else if they keep that sieve in goal, for crying out loud. Ridiculous. You saw the first game. Blew a lead, and he was terrible on that one play. But that's not my problem. That's Stan Bowman's problem.
I think that's a problem that can be addressed at the trade deadline. So I'm thinking that with the money that McDavid saved them, they'll be able to get into the playoffs with the goaltending they have. And then somewhere along the line, probably after New Year's, I think they're going to trade for a goalie so that they don't have to pay the full salary for this year, and the salary cap implications won't be as dire. I'm thinking that because they got to see the writing on the wall that Skinner is not going to take them to the promised land. I mean, he's just not good enough, and he has these terrible lapses, like that goal that he screwed up on. My God, a beer leaguer wouldn't make that mistake.
You know what the story is with Skinner? Skinner is a great guy. He's a great post-game interview when he loses, which is often, and he's very honest. He's everything but a good goalie. Now, why are we talking about him now? They had a whole summer to get another goalie, for crying out loud. This guy just didn't fly in from Mars. He's been around. We know it's all there. But he's a Swiss cheese goalie, and that's it. And that's their problem. It's also McDavid's problem. I don't know what he thinks, but wow, he can't be happy.
Yeah, they kind of sold the farm to get this team. The farm team is pretty desolate. No, let's just say that.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you think will be more pressure for McDavid this year or Matthews? McDavid has to win the cup, or Matthews, he had a really bad season last year.
I don't know Matthews' head, but I have to believe that Matthews is obviously thinking the same way McDavid is. The difference being, I've said this to you, Alena, I like the Maple Leaf goaltending. I think the only problem with the Maple Leafs is the curse of Tavares. And this is my own private thing. I'm not saying it anybody, but as long as this guy, I'm saying as long as he's on the Maple Leafs, they're not going to win the Stanley Cup. And that's it. We'll see. Let him prove me different. They got a good team. And now they got a really good goalie. They got a very good coach. They got a nice balance. Let him prove me wrong.
Jerry, what do you think?
My problem with Matthews is that in October, or rather in May and June, he disappears. His point production just plummets as soon as the playoffs start. Excuse me. So I don't know what happens to him, if it's just he's putting too much pressure on himself, or he just doesn't care, or because they don't get paid for the playoffs, right? So some of these guys, I remember an AHL goalie, I won't mention his name, but he was playing in the American Hockey League, and once the season ended and the playoffs started, he left the team because he wasn't getting paid. So some athletes are all about the money. So if that's the case, if that's the case with Matthews, then it's bad for the Maple Leafs. So.
It gets to the playoffs and Matthews chokes. It's there. It's evident. Somebody's got to get into his head, but the law of averages will finally catch up. Or who knows what it is. But when a guy fails consistently, particularly a team like the Maple Leafs, where the city is so desperate, you have national holidays when they make it past the first round, for crying out loud. So this guy's a choker until he shows differently.
There's a big enough sample size now that you remember Joe Sakic and Peter Forsberg and Gretzky and Curry. Those guys were able to elevate their games when the games meant more. And so far, I have not seen one iota of that from Matthews. And he's just been disappointment after disappointment once the regular season ends. He's a great regular season player, no doubt. I played with a guy that in practice, neither of the two goalies could stop this guy. He made it look so effortless. He just filled the net with pucks behind us, and we could not stop him. But get him in a game, I think he scored 2 goals that year. And some guys just don't deal up with pressure very well.
Jerry made a very good point, reminded me when Gordie Howe was in his prime, and as many historians know, Gordie Howe was originally supposed to be with the Rangers. When he came to camp, they insulted him and he left the Rangers. And of course, the next year he was with the Red Wings, and the greatest player I ever saw. However, the Rangers thought they were going to solve this problem with the kid brother of Gordie, who's Vic Howe. And the Rangers got Vic Howe. And I saw him playing for the Rovers. Jerry reminds me, you looked at Vic Howe in the practice or in the pregame warm-up. He skated like Gordie. He was built like Gordy. He shot like Gordy, except when the game started, he was Vic Howe. And of course, he had 2 years with the Rangers and he failed. So practice is one. I tell you, the first 2 or 3 times I saw him, I said to myself, boy, oh boy, the Rangers lucky, but it didn't work. So we'll see. We'll see what happens.
I personally think it's going to be a lot of pressure on McDavid. He's been in the league nearly a decade now, has every individual trophy you can win, but still no cup. The Oilers have gone all in to build around him. And now with that short 2-year extension, it's basically a countdown clock. If they don't win soon, everyone will question whether he stays in Edmonton.
I don't think there's any pressure on McDavid. I think he's a very cool guy. If what happened to a lot of the greats in their late years, well, pressure will come if they start booing him. If he gets booed at home, then you know there's going to be pressure. But this guy, he's got Leon, and he doesn't really slump too much. I think now we're going to see an Edmonton team kind of cruise along until, and as Jerry said, they can make a trade at the deadline. Get a goalie. Get a goalie.
Yeah, that's
when you skate 30 miles an hour, slumps don't usually come your way.
absolutely. In regards to Ovechkin, he's chasing now 900 goals. So he's sitting at 897 goals right now, with Gretzky's record at 894 already behind him. Do you think he can keep going long enough to hit 1,000? But I heard rumors that it's his last year in NHL. What do you think, guys?
I don't think he's going to make it. I think that the team is going to have a huge letdown. Washington really overachieved last year, and good credit to them. And credit to Eight for what he did. I just think there's going to be a natural letdown. I think attrition, which I've been wrong about in terms of the Florida team, I think attrition will get to him and they're going to slip. But you never know. He's very special to me as the Rocket and Howe and all those other great guys. So I wouldn't sell him short.
Yeah. Well, in order to reach 1,000 goals, he would need 2, probably maybe even 3 solid seasons, right? So 30, 35 goals a year. That's a big ask, especially at his age. And I think motivation's starting to fade as well. So he'll probably finish the season strong, maybe get close to 910, 920. And I think that's when he's going to retire. I heard rumors he's going to move back to Russia. So.
Yeah, I didn't think he was going to break Gretzky's record, so I'm probably the wrong guy to ask. But yeah, I doubted him once already, so I'm just going to say the guy can do anything he wants. He just seems to, like I say, he's a freak of nature. I mean, he's 40 years old and he's still playing like he was 20. And he's big. He's a big guy, 6'4", 220, I think. And so, that's a lot of muscle to be carrying around night after night after night. He's got to slow down eventually, but so far he hasn't showed that. So I wouldn't doubt it if he put his mind to it. I wouldn't doubt him.
I think everything is going to depend on the team around him. One of his henchmen, Tom Wilson, is also getting old. Also, any team would have liked to have a Tom Wilson, while everybody hates him except Washington people. But if Tom can keep up his game and a couple of the other guys, the young guys, you never can tell. But that's a lot to ask of a guy like Ovechkin at this point in time. But it's once in a while you get a guy who's 40 years old, who's a miracle maker. Same thing happened with the Maple Leafs with Johnny Bower. Johnny Bower was unbelievable going up to age 40. It's hard to tell. It's a lot what's in here and what's with the legs.
Well, I think he doesn't really need 1,000 to prove greatness. He already proved it all. Like, he's an amazing player. I never doubted him for a second that he's going to break Gretzky's record. But if anyone could chase it just for the love of scoring, and I know that Ovechkin loves to score, then it's Ovi. And in regards to new coaches, this season has some interesting coaching shakeups, like Mike Sullivan taking over New York Rangers. So what do you think about that?
You look at Mike, you could look at two sides of him, plus and a minus. The minus is clear. The guy missed the playoffs with Crosby and Malkin for 3 straight years. I mean, what kind of coaching is that? Now he comes to the Rangers, and conversely, he's a better coach than Laviolette was. That you can't tell right now. The team was terrible the first night at the Garden, and they came back. They won in Buffalo, but everybody beats Buffalo, so that doesn't really count. Now, next up is Washington. I believe that since they decided on him, I never would have picked him. But you can look at him two ways. Is he a retread or is he a breath of fresh air? We're going to have an answer really in New York, not until January. It's way too soon to tell.
What do you think that the team is missing at the moment? Like discipline, structure, what is that they need from the coach?
Well, the Rangers need the kind of spirit that they didn't have last year. Joe Micheletti, who was the color commentator on MSG Networks doing the Rangers for almost 20 years, who was a former player, who knows the game inside out. And at the end of the season, Joe was interviewed and he was asked, what was the one thing that was wrong with the Rangers? And he said the one thing was spirit. They didn't have the spirit. Now, they were crybabies. They were crying about Trouba. They were crying about this guy and the guys that were let go. And of course, when Trouba was gone, that went to captain and there went the spirit. Well, now they've got a JT Miller, who's a spirited guy. And I would say right now, the Rangers are going to be a surprisingly good team. A surprisingly good team. And if anyone makes a bet with me, I'll see you after class.
Well, I have concerns about their defense. So I think if Sullivan puts in a defense first system where the forwards help out the defense, that's got to be number one, because they just gave up way too many goals and quality chances last year. And Adam Fox took a big step backwards. He's got to return to his Norris Trophy ways. But I have faith. I think Mike Sullivan's going to turn it around. He's a good coach. And you're right, they missed the playoffs with Crosby and Malkin. But I think there were other factors at play there. And I think he's going to do well with the Rangers. I think the Rangers are going to surprise people.
Alena, we're talking about the Rangers like they're the only team with a new coach. You got a new coach in Boston. And look what this guy did in Pittsburgh already. I don't think anybody thought the Penguins did the right thing. And all of a sudden, they look good. But we'll see around. You got a lot of new guys, Dallas and so on. I'm partial to Berube. I'm a great Berube fan. And the way the NHL is now, it's so cutthroat. I can't believe that Peter DeBoer doesn't have a job. Peter DeBoer was canned. He did a phenomenal job. He was canned because his goalie let him down, but they didn't fire the goalie. I think he's going to be the first guy to be rehired, whoever gets canned first.
The most interesting guy I'm watching is Dan Bylsma in Seattle. He won a cup with Pittsburgh with Crosby and Malkin. The Kraken are interesting. They have 2 second lines and 2 third lines. So they're very balanced. And if they make the playoffs, they are going to give somebody nightmares, because the way they play, they just do not give up. They are relentless. So Seattle's just down the road from us, so I see them a lot. So they're the ones I'm watching.
I like Bylsma. I always like coaches who are good interviews. He was always a good interview. But the problem with Seattle is it's almost like the Tavares curse. How can you name a team Kraken?
I know.
I mean, give me a break. Yeah. I mean, there's so many other. Could have named after a mountain. They got great mountains in Seattle, whatever. But they could be good. You know what? You reminded me of, Jerry, when you said that about the lines. My friend Vic Moran, who I believe Alena is going to have on pretty soon, he said the Rangers have a first line and 3 third lines.
I love that.
We'll see tonight. We're in Pittsburgh. It should be interesting.
Well, my Canucks got Adam Foote as head coach now. Tocchet is in Philadelphia. So I think Tocchet was kind of wearing thin with the players anyway. So I think Adam Foote's Well, so far, by all indications, he's got them on the right track. I mean, they beat Calgary 4-1 in their first game. So my prediction of them going 82-0 and winning 16 straight playoff games, that still holds true. So
I want to know something. You're there, and we are not there. What was with Tocchet that they wore thin? He told you, he say something like, you got to made a stupid offside. What are you rushing over? And I don't know. What was wrong with Rick?
Well, every coach has a shelf life. I just think his intensity was off the charts, and I think it worked. And if you look at Tocchet's coaching record, his first two jobs, Tampa Bay and Phoenix, he got hired halfway through the season. They finished with a winning record for the rest of that year, made the playoffs the second year, and in the third year missed the playoffs. So I think he just wears on people, and I think he'll have a 2-year shelf life in Philadelphia, just like he's had everywhere else. So whatever his personality is, it grates on people. And I was of the opinion when we hired Tocchet as the coach, I said, we don't need Tocchet the coach. We need Tocchet the player.
He was an admirable player, and he's in Philadelphia like Tortorella. When Tortorella came to Philadelphia, this is an energetic hire, and we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
You can't be confident about the Flyers for the same reason you can't be confident about Oilers goaltending. Flyers don't have good goaltending. And then this is historic. This goes all the way back to Pelle Lindbergh. They haven't had a really good goalie since that tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
That's really something. You'd think these guys would wise up. What are you going to do?
I know last night they started Dan Vladar, who's a career backup. I mean, he's not a number one. I don't know who their other goalie is, but if Dan Vladar is the number one, they're in big trouble.
I think that you have to look at Pittsburgh, and they're winning with a Latvian goalie, are they not?
Yeah. Well, he won the first game. He got a shutout, Artur Silovs, who won the Calder Cup last year with the Canucks farm team, and he was the MVP.
So you never know with these guys. You never know. And sometimes you bring a new goalie in, and he's phenomenal. I mean, look at the Rangers. When the Rangers had Kevin Weeks lined up to be their number one goalie, and he was mediocre. Let's not kid around. Then they had this other guy who I think was drafted. What's the lowest you could be? 1,200. It was, I mean, it was awful. But there was King Henrik. It was King Henrik, and he came in. Nobody knew anything about him. He was drafted way to a subterranean draft, and he became a Hall of Famer. Very hard to figure. Very hard.
Well, Silovs has the potential to be a very, very good goalie, and we just didn't have room for him here because we had Thatcher Demko and Kevin Lankinen. You're not going to replace those two guys with a rookie. So wish him well. I'm watching him because he did well. When he played with the Canucks, he did really well, so I'm hoping for him.
Who's number one on the Canucks now in goal?
Demko.
Is he healthy?
Right now he is, yeah. So
I just want to ask Jerry, and I have to ask Alena, how do you name a guy Thatcher? Was he named after a park? I mean, it's a great name. I just was wondering where the Thatcher came from. Sorry, I don't mean to fool around. This is serious stuff.
No, in my 63 years of life, I've never met a Thatcher. So,
There's a whole new vibe happening off the ice too. Did you see it, guys? The no dress code. The NHL officially scrapped the pregame dress code. Some love it, others think it ruined tradition. And is this the leagues finally catching up with the NBA style culture, or do you think crossing a line?
Well, sooner or later, I found out when I had my 1948 Plymouth that sooner or later it would be outdated. Times change, okay? And the league is acknowledging that times are changing. Now, what does it matter? As long as these guys don't walk in their underwear, they're wearing whatever they want, right? Isn't that? It's freedom to dress, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Now, if Lou Lamoriello was still in the league, it may not have happened because Lou was very, very strict, And I don't think that's anything to fuss about. It was done with thought. And by the way, Alena, has anybody protested?
Absolutely not.
Well, they get to wear what they want now. Why would they protest?
I agree. I actually love the idea that they can wear whatever they want. Let them show their personality. Hockey needed it for years, and you can wear a hoodie and still drop 40 goals. So the energy the league needs, I think. What do you think, Jerry?
I think it doesn't matter. I think it's a non-issue. Sure, you'd like to see guys dress up in suit and tie and stuff, but really it doesn't matter. You're kind of impinging on personal rights when you tell them you have to dress a certain way. Wear what you want. Let me see your flamboyance. I mean, some of these NBA guys come in wearing the craziest stuff, and I was like, whoa, man, it's entertaining. It's like seeing
That's
what
part
the
of it, yeah.
what the yeah. So yeah, I say have at it. Wear what you want.
You know why I'm laughing? Because years ago, when Connie Smythe was running the Leafs, this is in the mid 1930s, he had a big hate on for Art Ross, who ran the Bruins. And Art Ross, in turn, had a big hate on Smythe. The Leafs were going to be having a game in Boston. And before the game, Smythe took an ad in the Boston papers, in the Globe and the Herald, and he said, "Come to the game tonight, and you're going to see the classiest team in the NHL." And all the Leafs came to the game wearing tuxedos. That's class. That's class.
I do like Nylander's style.
If I was a Maple Leaf now, okay, and they changed the dress code, you know what I would wear? I would wear my bar mitzvah suit, which I got from Mo and Phil on Stanton Street. I'm so old that I wore peg pants. Wish I saved it. I would have worn it tonight. You know what Mo and Phil's competition was across the street? Joe and Paul.
If we went back to Brooklyn now, is anything the same from when you grew up? Is there anything still there?
Oh, yeah. Let's face it, Brooklyn was once a city within itself. If you went to downtown Brooklyn now, you'd see areas that haven't changed. They have what they call a silk stocking district, which is Brooklyn Heights, which is right at the waterfront. But many parts of Brooklyn have become gentrified. Now, my neighborhood is a low to low middle income neighborhood. It was a blue collar neighborhood, and it got run down. And my grandfather owned the house. We had a 3-story brownstone, and he sold it for $5,000, believe it or not. But right now, that neighborhood where I used to live has become gentrified. I'll tell you a quick story since you brought it up. Chico Resch, my buddy Chico, used to play golf for the Islanders and the Flyers and the Colorado Rockies. Chico and I were good friends. We worked together on the Devils, and he wanted me to give him a tour of Brooklyn. And we went to my old neighborhood. Chico loved to talk to anybody. If there was nobody around, he talked to the lamppost. But we're standing on the corner of Marcy and Vernon, and you have my book, Tales of Brooklyn. There's a picture, I'm sure, in there. And there was an African-American lady standing on the corner with her son. And he went over to her and he says, "Lady, you live around here." She said, "There you go. There you go." Show them the cover. Show them the cover. There you go. That's me. Thank you. And by the way, you can get it via Amazon. So anyhow, Chico goes over to her and he says to the lady, "You live around here?" She says, "Yeah, I live on Willoughby Avenue, the next block." She says, "Well, how do you like the neighborhood?" She says, "I love the neighborhood." She says, "Yeah, but I'm moving." He says, "If you love the neighborhood, why would you be moving?" She says, "We can't afford it." And that's what happened. Gentrified neighborhood went through the ceiling. But you can see where Ebbets Field was, where the Dodgers played. And of course, Coney Island hasn't changed. That's a great part of Brooklyn. And Coney Island was famous for having a hockey rink there. It's called the Abe Stark Rink. Beer league teams play there now. But in answer to your question, if you come to Brooklyn, you'll have a good time.
I went through a few chapters of your book yesterday.
I really love it so far. It's amazing. Your house is not there anymore. Just the
That's right.
wall, right? Yeah.
No, the house was, the neighborhood went to pot, and I took friends to visit. And the last time we went there were three houses, one on the corner, the Myers family, 586. We were in 582. And my friend Bob Stampleman, he wanted a tour of Brooklyn. And we came to my neighborhood. The house on the corner, 586, was just rubble, bricks. 584, which was next to us, was a little higher pile of rubble. And my house, believe it or not, the sides were still up and everything else was demolished, but you could see right through to that wall and you could still see the maple leaves. So the song has to be Maple Leaf Forever for my house. But the house wasn't there, but the maple leaves was still there. They painted on the wall in 1950, 51. You know what? That's when they won a cup. Maybe you should find a wall, Alena, find a wall and paint two maple leaves. They might win the cup in spite of Tavares.
Maybe they'll break the curse. Yeah. You mentioned in the book that you went back twice to the location of where the house was, and you're never going back there again.
That's right. It was very depressing. It was very, very depressing. I had a wonderful teacher in PS 54. Her name was Ann Yearwood. And she did something no other teacher had ever done. It was like a miracle. She invited me, Joe Viteri, and Neil Brown, the three of us from our class, to our house for Christmas. Can you imagine to be in your teacher's house? One day, I rode from our house in Manhattan on 110th Street to Putnam Avenue, where Mrs. Yearwood lived. And that was a beautiful brownstone neighborhood, and it still had its charm. So parts of Brooklyn, old Brooklyn, held up, and ours didn't. It's the way it goes.
You told me a really funny story about the back of the cover. It's you at the rooftop. And do you want to tell it to our listeners?
Well, it was one of the scariest moments in my young life. I was working for the New York Journal American newspaper. I was doing sports, and the Dodgers had won the World Series in 1955, and there was all this great excitement. Now the new season is going to begin 1956. So my sports editor sent me back to Ebbets Field to do a story on how they get Ebbets Field ready for the new baseball season. This was about 4 days before the season. And I had this crazy photographer, Dick Hoffman, with me. All photographers in those days were crazy. And what he did was he took pictures of me interviewing the groundskeeper at the pitcher's mound. And I finished interviewing him, and he said to me, "Let's go upstairs." I didn't know what the hell he meant by going upstairs. He says, "Let's go up to the roof." So I go up to the roof with Dick. And the Ebbets Field roof, it was bad enough to be on this damn roof, but the roof was at an angle, for the rain. And he says, "We're going to walk around. We're going to walk around." We started out behind home plate on the roof. And now we're walking along toward the third base area, and I am beyond scared. And he says, "Well, keep going. Keep going. Are you crazy?" I didn't say that to him. I had to keep my big mouth shut. And we go all the way around to center field where the lights were. "That's bad enough. Okay, enough already, Dick." He says, No, I didn't say enough already. But he says, "What I want you to do is climb up the ladder to the top light." Aye. And of course, in my coat pocket, I had all my notes from my interview, which I did at the mound. And I'm climbing up. I don't know what the hell was going through my head by this time, but he got me up to the top rung. And he says, "Now I want to take a picture of you, examine like you're examining the lights and taking notes." So, of course, I did this. I must have been in a total state of shock by this time. If he asked me to do anything, I would have. So I did the thing. He took the pictures and he says, "Okay, come on down." So I gingerly are going down. And after I got to the third rung, my jacket got caught in the rung and all my notes fell out of my pocket the air. And naturally, I did what was normal. I reached for them. But if I reached a little further, I would have been doing an imitation of a helicopter or Icarus, who thought he could fly. But I just pulled back in time, and everything flew out on the center field grass. And we eventually went down. And I have to tell you, it was a very, very scary event. And of course, there's the picture to prove that I wasn't lying about that when I tell people. That's the proof positive. Anyhow, that's what happened. And this guy Dick was a wild man. I had a few other episodes with it, but nothing like that.
No, there's so many great stories in it. Like, I can't wait to read more. After we finish this, I'm gonna dive into the book. I just read a few chapters, and it's fascinating. It's written so well. Like, amazing book. Love it.
I wrote it during the COVID because I had more time, but the book was inspired by Chico Resch. Because as I told you, Chico and I worked years together, and he loved me telling him Brooklyn stories. And one story in particular he loved more than anything, which is in the book, which was about my Aunt Hattie and ice cream. And he just loved that story. And he kept asking me to retell it because we came from a family that loved ice cream. And what happened was that one day he wrote to me and he said, my wife, Diane, wants you to write the ice cream Aunt Hattie story and send it to her. So I wrote the story and I sent it to her. And the next 2 or 3 days later, he says, Diane wants you to write another Brooklyn story for her. So I wrote another Brooklyn story and she loved it. So now she's asking me to write a third one. I'm thinking, what the hell am I doing writing these stories for Diane? I got friends who might like them. So I started sending them to friends, and everybody's telling me you should do a book. So when I got to the 20th one, I sent them all to my agent, and he said, you do 10 more and we'll do the book. And so I got 36 stories in there.
I love how you dedicated the first chapter to your wife and how you showed the struggles women face trying to break into hockey or even the sports industry in general. It's kind of sad, but also really inspiring. Even in 2025, I still think women have to fight hard to make their place in a male-dominated field like sports.
Well, Shirley struggled. This was a traumatic event for the family because I had been writing it for years now. And what happened was, this is hard to believe, Jerry, when you went to a hockey game in the media in those days, instead of you having a pass, they had a ticket for every game. And on the ticket, it said in plain English, ladies not permitted in the press box. Every single ticket, every single game, it said ladies not permitted in the press box. Well, there happened to be, I was already doing stuff for the Toronto Star at that time. There was a paper in Kingston called the Kingston Whig Standard, and the Leafs were playing the Rangers in the playoffs, and the sports editor, the Kingston Whig Standard, wanted that series covered. And because I was doing other work, he said, I want Shirley to cover the series, the playoff. So, of course, she was all excited. And what happened was, first game at the Garden, she goes up to the press box, and they wouldn't let her in. They wouldn't let her in. And well, right behind her was Jim Bouton, the former Yankee pitcher, who was now was in a sportscaster. So he was a witness to this. So what happened was, since they didn't let her in, she had to sit on some seat way in the top with a typewriter on her lap. That's what they made her do. And she had to do that. So she came home that night almost in tears. What should I do? I said, well, you know what you should do? We have a New York City Human Rights Commission. You write a letter to them. Eleanor Holmes Norton was the head of it, and let them know. And sure enough, Eleanor Holmes Norton got the letter, and she had a trial. It was Shirley on one side, and the Rangers guy, their lawyer, I think Emil Francis was there, and she won the case. But here's the kicker. Every single guy but one, and I'm talking about 7 or 8 guys, didn't want her in the press box. They hated the idea. The only one guy who stuck up for my wife was Neil Offen, a young guy writing a column for the New York Post. They were adamant about this. I did a book with Hal Bach of the Associated Press about Rod Gilbert. He didn't want Shirley in the box, and that was the end of that friendship. So I lost 6 friends. What am I going to do? But she won. She won. It was a great victory. The problem that I face is that because she won that battle for a lot of women. None of the women since really have recognized her, what she did. My wife's problem was that she didn't want publicity. She just wanted to do the thing, and that's it. She was not one to make a big deal about it.
Yeah, she was a trailblazer, that's for sure. And man, I really, really wish I could have met her. She sounds like a fascinating woman. But it reminds me of a story of when the Canucks were on their 1982 run to the Stanley Cup final. A woman reporter, I think she was from New York, came in to interview Richard Brodeur after the game. So she sat down beside him with her notepad, asked him questions, and he answered. Richard's a very friendly guy and down to earth. And so they had like a 5-minute interview. And after it was over, she got up and left. But the whole interview, Richard Brodeur was naked. And he's French, so it's not a big deal to him, right? And nudity, it's just a human body, right? It just was what it was. I always thought that story was fascinating. The woman who interviewed him didn't make a big deal out of it. He didn't make a big. The only reason I found out about it was because it was a mention in a little blurb in some article in a magazine. So
I think Richard Brodeur was allergic to towels. I think the woman in question, I'm only guessing now, but Robin Herman of the New York Times. I'm not positive though, but
I'm going to have to do a deep dive on that because now it's piqued my interest.
you know, there are a lot of women doing wonderful work in hockey writing. Very good. And my wife was good because she went to the University of Michigan when Red Berenson was the star at Michigan, and hockey was big, really big. So when we got married, she knew what the game was about, really did. And she wrote about 6 books, hockey books on her own, and she was really, really good.
Yeah, I remember you saying that the first Stan Fischler book I got was the Hockey Encyclopedia. And you were saying that she did almost all the work on that.
Well, we did 2 hockey encyclopedias. The one that you're talking about probably was the Macmillan book, which was sister of the baseball encyclopedia. And Shirley was very good with what was a new thing then, computers. Computers had just come along. And I would say that Shirley's byline in the front of the book should have been this big, and mine should have been like this big, because she did a phenomenal. That book never would have happened. Never would have happened without her, without what she did. We did another book, which was an A to Z encyclopedia that had all kinds of cockamamie stories. I'll just tell you one. Under B, we had Bruno and Blythe. Bruno and Blythe were the first press agents when the Rangers came into the league. In 26, there already was the New York Americans who had played there a year before. The New York Americans had a fan base, and nobody knew from the New York Rangers. They're brand new, and they needed fans. So Bruno and Blythe, these 2 crazy press agents, go into the Rangers office, and they find Lester Patrick, and they say, you know what, Lester, with your new team, we need to get 2 blocks of people. We need Italian fans and Jewish fans. So Lester said, we don't have a Jew on the team, and we don't have an Italian on the team. What do you want from me? So Blythe says, give me your roster. and he looks at the roster and he's the goalie, Lorne Chabot. He says, Lester, I'm going to make him a Jew. His name is Lorne Shabatsky now. And then he looked at again and he sees Oliver Reinke, who was a Finn, and he says, I'm going to make Oliver Reinke Italian, and he became Ali Rocco. And if you look in the stories in the Times for the first 20 games of the season, it was Shabatsky and Rocco.
Rocco.
That's how crazy. And by that time, the Rangers were better than the Americans, so they didn't need any phony names anymore. That was in that book, Bruno and Blythe.
I just want to tell a story that I've had in my head for the last couple of weeks. When my serious career ended abruptly, I went back to playing beer league. And so I played for this team called the Chiefs, and we had to play this other team called the Black Crows. And it was a Sunday afternoon. I tended not to play very well in afternoon games. And anyway, I wasn't in the best frame of mind. And this guy comes in on a breakaway and he pulls this hot dog move and he scores. And I didn't appreciate it very much. So pretty late in the third period, I'm waiting for him to get close to the net again, but he wouldn't. And so finally, about 5 minutes left in the game, he gets to the boards behind and beside the net. So I go out there and I grab him by the head. I've got him in an alligator clamp. I got his head in an alligator clamp, and he's going, let me go. And then everybody kind of gets in. We fall to the ice. I'm tangled up with a bunch of people, but I still got his head. And it took him probably about a minute before I finally let him go. And then my legs are tangled up with some other guy, and it's a big line brawl. Everybody's going at it. And I've finally get to my knees, but there's still somebody on the back of my leg, so I can't get up. And I feel somebody trying to reef my mask off. And like you see the NHL goalies now, their masks will just come right off no matter what. But mine, I never wanted to come off. I had it strapped super tight, so he couldn't get it off. And so he's reefing on my mask, trying to get it off. And finally, he fucking gets it off, and he starts punching me in the back of the head. So I put my glove up to stop the punching, and then finally the referees get in between us and everything kind of settles down, and they call the game and no shaking hands. So we went to our respective dressing rooms. The other goalie comes up to me again. He wanted to go, and I said, well, we go now, we're suspended for life, so I'm not going to do it. And otherwise I would have obliged him. But in any event, we get into the dressing room and we're all sitting down taking our equipment off, and the league convener comes in. The convener is the guy who runs the day-to-day operations of the league. So he's actually a friend of mine. And he comes in and he stands there and he says, you know, those guys are Hell's Angels, right? What? Nobody knew. Apparently they were a chapter of the Hell's Angels. So I started a brawl with the Hell's Angels and lived to tell about it.
You went to hell.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, but you know what? The next time we played them, it was business as usual. Nothing happened. So
you're changing your nickname to Goon Goalie.
Yeah, that's one thing I was not. I was involved in 2 bench clearing brawls. Both times my partner in the thing was the other goalie, and in one, the other goalie was pinned down, so he couldn't get to me. And the other one, the guy was half my size, so we just stood beside each other. Yeah, no, I never got into a fight. Started a lot of fights, but I never had one myself. So yeah, it was not in my personality.
Well, guys, we're gonna wrap up. That's been such great pleasure. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah.
Can I tell you one joke?
Absolutely.
Guy comes over to me at Times Square. He says, is there a cop around here? And I looked around. I said, no. He says, good, stick him up.
Right on.
Bye.
Okay, see ya.